Okay, good to see you all again.
Yeah.
Enjoying the opportunity to be with you for many weeks in a row, and I appreciate your being present and joining together in this consciousness of oneness that we have. And I'd like us to begin first with a time of contemplative prayer. So I invite you to take a few moments to become comfortable, enter into that open and receptive, that peaceful and relaxed state you are so familiar with, that place within you that is peace, that attitude of letting go and letting God. You know, that mystic prayer, mystic contemplative prayer, is not begging for personal favor, some supreme external being. Mystic prayer, contemplative prayer, is simply an awareness of what already is, a spiritual dimension of being that we open ourselves to, we contemplate. My favorite, one of the most beautiful definitions of prayer that I've come across is from the great American transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson. I invite you to enter into the spirit of that descriptive definition that Emerson gave. Prayer is the contemplation of the facts of life from the highest point of view. It is the soliloquy of a beholding and jubilant soul. It is the Spirit of God pronouncing his works good. Prayer is this viewing life from that higher point of view, the highest point of view. It is a beholding of the divine, not a seeking for some future blessing, but an awareness of the blessing that already is. So we sit in openness and receptivity to the divine light that is within us. There is a light, there is a knowing, there is a wisdom that is within us. If we turn from outer concerns and conditions, God is omnipresence, omnipresence of wisdom, divine wisdom, guides and directs us to our highest good right now. So I invite you to hold that truth for yourself. Divine wisdom guides me to my highest good here and now. So we open ourselves to whatever guidance, whatever light, whatever understanding we may need right in this moment. It is already there. Divine wisdom guides us to our highest good. So we hold ourselves in this awareness, this trusting, this openness. And we hold others in that same. We contemplate their lives from the highest point of view. So if you know of anyone who is seeking guidance and understanding, hold them in this truth. Divine wisdom guides you to your highest good. Light is within you. You do not need to seek to get God to love us or do anything to get God to love us, some external being. God is the very love that is within us, that is in all. In front of us, the omnipresence of love. behind us, love. Within us, love. To the right and left of us, love. Above and below, love. Think of this consciousness of connection and affection and benevolence and compassion. This energy that we cannot describe and yet we know in our heart of hearts. Divine love harmonizes my life. Divine love harmonizes my life. Divine love connects me with all things. It's because of this divine connection of love that we can pray with and for others, knowing that the consciousness we hold is connected to their consciousness, and that the divine love is already at work in their lives. Divine love harmonizes your life. We do not need to do anything. We need only to know this truth. Divine love harmonizes our lives. Let this love fill us, surround us, harmonize us. Right now, harmonizing our bodies, our conditions, our relationships. Divine love is already at work and present. Divine love harmonizes us. So for a few moments of silence, we direct our attention to that divine presence that is all light and all love. Receptive, open, knowing that it is the very core of our being. It is the essence of what we are. Spirit of light and love that gives us life. Be still and know. Be still and experience this reality here and now. We are knowing that all that we need, we already have within us. All that we need is drawn to us by divine love. All that we need is expressed through us, through that light and love that is within us. This is the Christ consciousness. This is what it means to pray in the name. So we now accept our good already present, continually unfolding in the here and now. We give thanks, and so it is. Amen. I invite you to bring your attention back to this place, to the shining faces on the screen and in the sanctuary. Just recognize that we are connected by this divine love and this divine light. Move forward for the topic of the meaning of it all. Have you ever, in a quiet moment, wondered if your life has meaning or if the universe has meaning? What did it feel like to wonder about that? Did you just feel a sense of wonder? Did wondering about the meaning of it all make you feel anxious, make you feel uplifted, make you feel curious or sad? Did you feel a longing to understand? I have felt all of those different feelings in different parts of my life. I have wondered many times, what does it all mean? And mostly in that wondering, I have felt the longing to understand. And to me, it is understandable that some people feel that life is meaningless. After the horrors of World War II, many people felt that life was meaningless. And a new philosophy emerged in that generation precisely because of that feeling, because of that uh, extremely challenging, we might say, experience of a major world war following a major depression. So many people wondered about that and felt that, and this new philosophy emerged in that generation. It's called existentialism. Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, and other existentialists concluded that existence is meaningless. Of course, they lived in France, which bore a great deal of the brunt of the Second World War and the aftermath of that. But they felt this. They felt that there was no meaning in life to be found, to be perceived, so that we are compelled to create our own meaning. Now, in reading the existentialists, what I have found is that what they wrote about creating, was more along the lines of what I would call purpose rather than what I'm thinking about today as meaning. But the wondering was still the same. But I think the question of purpose is not quite the same as the question of meaning. Of course, we can create and pursue purposes or goals. It's one of the things we do as human beings. Purposes are, in effect, aimed towards the future rather than the present. Individuals and companies have goals in their work, they have purposes. But is the work itself, are the goals or purposes meaningful? That is a different question. The question of meaning is a question about, we might say, significance. Does the universe itself as a whole suggest or signify a meaning? And if so, does my life have significance in relationship to the meaning of the universe as a whole? When I pose the question, does my work or relationship have any significance in the grand scheme of things, I am wondering if the universe as a whole signifies anything, if it points to anything, if my experiences are relevant to or related to this grander significance. So I've approached these questions from three main perspectives. The perspective of the nature of language, which is where we talk a lot about meaning, but also from the perspective of metaphysics and mysticism. In the context of language, what is the meaning of meaning? In simplest terms, the meaning of words or symbols are whatever those symbols or words uh, indicate or signify beyond themselves. The meaning of words and symbols often indicate things we perceive, whether with our senses or our minds. They indicate things that we perceive or in our minds or with our senses. However, in terms of understanding them, words are always related to other words and symbols. One way we know this to be true is that when we come across the word we do not understand, what do? We usually look it up in a dictionary. What do we find? Sometimes we find pictures, but always we find more words. If we don't understand some of the words in the definition, we look those words up and find out, again, only more words, and so on. In grad school, I took a course on the philosophy of language. It was a highly technical course that involved a lot of symbolic logic. One of my key takeaways from the course was that the nature of meaning is holistic. This according to the logic of language and to the great philosophers of language. Meanings of words and sentences are derived from the whole of the language, the rules and the vocabulary of language. So all language indicates the ultimate interconnectedness of all of the parts of language. Words are only meaningful in the context of an entire language, in the interconnection of meanings. So everything in our so-called natural languages ultimately indicates, that is, ultimately means that there's a unity, a oneness, a wholeness, not only of language, but of experience, of what we talk about with our language. Every piece of language indicates or metaphorically points to the unity of experience, the unity of language. So this is where the idea of language fits into this question of meaning. Somehow it all indicates, everything points to a kind of unity of experience. The history of metaphysics, from Pythagoras to Alfred North Whitehead and modern philosophers, consists mostly of what are called metaphysical monists. Okay? A metaphysical monist is a philosopher who contends that oneness is the fundamental character of reality, and that all appearances of multiplicity are encompassed in and permeated by that oneness, however they might describe the nature of that oneness. There are different opinions among all these metaphysical monists about the nature of this ultimate one or this ultimate unity, but not so much controversy about the fact of this fundamental unity of reality. In fact, science relies on that unity so that they can say, oh, the whole universe is governed by this set of laws everywhere, right? The whole universe is made of the same stuff everywhere. And this is how we can understand it. We can understand the universe precisely because it has this unity. It's a sort of unstated assumption of science. And we also find this way of thinking not only in Western thought, but also in Chinese and Indian philosophy. Right? This idea, this fundamental idea of a metaphysical unity of everything, this indication or significance, this meaning of oneness, we find in all of these metaphysical systems around the world. So the unity of everything is also a common theme, as you know, in the world's great mystical teachings. We can use other words in place of this idea of unity. We can say interconnectedness, interrelatedness, or simply oneness. Mysticism focuses on this. The writings of mystics are pervaded with references to the one as the source of all, to the oneness of all within the one, and to consciousness of union with the one as the ultimate goal. So mysticism, again, like language, like metaphysics, points to an ultimate meaning of unity, of oneness. The one of the most influential mystics, I've referred to this mystic before in the history of Christianity, was known as Dionysius the Areopagite. And this mystic wrote in the 6th century. We don't know anything about who actually wrote these writings, but they're extraordinarily influential. And one of the things we find in that text, the writings of Dionysius, whoever Dionysius was, is this: we, in the diversity of what we are drawn together by it, that is God. We are drawn together by it and are led into a God-like oneness, into a unity reflecting God. So this idea, again, pervades Western or Christian mysticism. In the 8th century, there was a great Hindu sage, philosopher, mystic, who's known as Shankara. Shankara basically synthesized or reconciled all the different forms of Indian philosophy into a kind of unified whole that was known as non-dualism. And Shankara wrote, in reference to this point, that being with a capital B, is the ultimate reality, that being, true, intelligent, comprehends within itself every variety of being, penetrating and permeating all as a thread which strings together beads. So again, this idea of everything sort of connected like a great cosmic necklace, I suppose, right? Pervading but encompassing all, this oneness. The Sufi tradition, again, we find this same emphasis. The Sufis are the mystics of Islam. There was a 10th century important Sufi mystic named Baba Kubi, or known as Baba Kubi. And Baba Kubi wrote poetry to express his feeling of perceiving God in and as all beings, just as we teach in unity, it's taught in mysticism. His poem, The Vision of God in Everything, beautifully reflects this Sufi mystic view that the one God is everywhere, in everything. So I'm just going to read you a little part of that poem that you get where you get the idea. He wrote, "In the market, in the cloister, only God I saw. But when I looked with God's eyes, only God I saw. In all the eye discovered, only God I saw. I passed away into nothingness, I vanished, and lo, I was the all living, only God I saw." So in this consciousness of mystic oneness, we see with the eyes of God. And what we see is God. Only God I saw. And what we become is only God, his highest state of consciousness. This is the, again, sort of meaning as it's understood, the meaning of life, if you will, the meaning of existence as understood in mysticism, this attaining of this consciousness of absolute unity with the divine, and as all things being the divine. Again, from the Christian tradition, I make reference to Hildegard of Bingen. Behind me, you see a painting that reflects, or an image of a painting that reflects her consciousness of the nature of reality as a kind of uh, series of spheres encompassing all things. She emphasized this unity of the universe and this immanence of God. One of the things she said, I think, gets right to the point. She wrote that uh, everything that is in the heavens, on earth, and under the earth is penetrated with connectedness, penetrated with relatedness. So again, this idea of everything sort of pointing to this interconnection of all things, this divine unity. I want to also make reference, just because I can't stop giving examples. There's lots of them. In fact, the poem that Elise shared this morning, interestingly, was that same idea of unity as found in Hindu mysticism. But I wanted to mention in the 19th century, two of my favorite mystics. One I referred to in our meditation was Emerson. The other one, Vivekananda. Vivekananda was largely responsible for bringing into the Western world an awareness of and a respect for Hindu thought. Before Vivekananda in the 19th century, most Westerners thought of, Hinduism as a kind of sort of crazy paganism that was inferior to Christianity. But Vivekananda brought respect and interest and founded what's called the Vedanta Society. So Vivekananda and Emerson, these quotes are from them. The first one is from Emerson. Emerson asserted that the human mind is connected to a universal mind, what he also called the oversoul. So one of the things he wrote is, "There is one mind common to all individual men. Every man is an inlet to the same and to all of the same." So all of us are connected to this, in his view. All of us are connected to this one mind. And that passage is the beginning of the essay that he wrote on history, because he saw history as this kind of interconnectedness that we all have with everything, all possibilities, all possible experiences. That anything that in effect we can share in the consciousness of Shakespeare, for example, in poetry. Another passage that I love is from The Oversoul, his essay on the Oversoul. And he wrote, "Within man is the soul of the whole." There's again that idea of this sort of perfect oneness. Within man is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. And this deep power in which we exist and whose beatitude is all accessible to us is not only self-sufficing and perfect in every hour, but the act of seeing and the thing seen, the seer and the spectacle, the subject and the object are one. This passage sort of reflects back again to that point that the Sufi mystic was making, that there's no separation between subject and object in this consciousness that is something, as Emerson puts it, that's already within us. Within each one of us is the soul of the whole, and what he calls the wise silence. Enter into that experience of the silence. Vivekananda, this quote is from Vivekananda, again expressing a similar idea. He wrote, all differences in this world are of degree and not of kind, because oneness is the secret of everything. Oneness is the secret of everything. So again, pointing to this idea of oneness, unity, holism, interconnectedness, however you want to describe it, as being sort of ultimately what everything signifies, what everything means in its totality. Now, again, within mysticism, there's another common thread. It's the idea in some forms of mysticism, what you find is a practice of contemplation of truth, contemplation of God. And it's kind of one might say, an intellectual mysticism that leads to this consciousness of oneness. But another way, another thread in the mystic theme is totally focused on love, basically attaining divine union through love. And of course, love in this connection is more of a feeling than it is of a intellectual concept that we can explain to someone. Talk about love, but unless a person knows it, what it is within themselves, we can't convey anything. So love is something that is a very part of our being. Love is a consciousness of interconnection, right? Through feeling rather than through thought. Love mysticism can lead to the full experience of the meaning of it all. Right? There's a popular Buddhist meditation that's used throughout China and India, especially in Buddhism. And it beautifully connects this contemplation of the aspects of love with attaining the mystic consciousness of oneness or of nirvana in Buddhist terms. Here's what is recommended, part of that meditation. You get a sense of what the meditation is about. So here it says, here with thoughts of benevolence, one pervades first one direction, then a second direction, then a third direction, then a fourth direction, then above, then below, then all around. So the idea here in this meditation is one puts one's thoughts on benevolence, goodwill, compassion, love, and sends that energy or directs that attention to all areas of the cosmos, above, below, the left, the right, within, and so on. And it goes on to say, identifying oneself with all, one pervades the entire universe with thoughts of benevolence, with heart grown great, wide, deep, boundless, purified of all ill will. Isn't that a beautiful way to think about or contemplate the universe, sending thoughts of benevolence? The meditation goes on and says the same thing, basically, thoughts of compassion, and then thoughts of sympathy, and then thoughts of equanimity, this sort of sense of being at peace and in balance with everything. And of course, we find love mysticism in the context of the history of Christian mysticism. There was a Christian monk and theologian who lived in the 4th century named John Cassian. A lot of people haven't really heard of Cassian today, but he was one of the primary early influences on some of the functions of what Christianity became, I guess you could say, because he was involved in preserving knowledge in the monasteries so that knowledge from the past was not lost in difficult times or times of war. Right? He was involved in building hospitals, kind of the earliest hospitals, if you will, that were built by Christians. But also his thought, his practices, his ideas were extremely important as an influence on mysticism. John Cassian precedes even Dionysius. And this is one of the things that I wanted to share from Cassian's thoughts. He said, "It is useless, therefore, to boast of our fasting, vigils, poverty, and reading of scriptures when we have not achieved the love of God and our fellow men. Whoever has achieved love has God within himself, and his intellect is always with God." So for Cassian, this was like the important thing. The fasting, the vigils, the practice of poverty as a monk, that's what he did, the reading of scriptures, all of that is in effect useless if we don't make that connection of love. It is that idea of love, or God as love, or being love in our world, that unites us, that gives our lives meaning. Right? And again, I'll take one more example from Sufism, because I know many of you love Rumi. Rumi's a very popular poet, mystic, actually throughout the world now. So he sounded this same theme of union through love in his poetry. So again, a brief passage from Rumi expresses again the same idea. To love is to be God. Never will a lover's chest feel any sorrow. Never will a lover's robe be touched by mortals. Never will a lover's body be buried in the earth. To love is to be God. Isn't that a beautiful thought? To love is to be God. Of course, in Judaism, the most important passages, or some of the most important passages in Judaism, the practice of Judaism, are called Shema Yisrael, which means in English, "Hear, O Israel." And of course, the name Israel means one who strives with God. Right? So it's a call to anyone or all who seek to do God's will. Hear, O Israel. The first part of the Shema is what Jesus called the first and great commandment. Hear, O Israel. I'm going to do our translation of the Lord into the I am. Hear, O Israel, the I am our God, the I am is one. Love the I am your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. That's the first one. Jesus said the second great commandment is like unto the first. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then he said, all the laws and prophets hang on these two commandments. All the laws and prophets hang on these two commandments. Now, Jesus did not say this is the meaning of it all, but he did imply that love is the essential meaning of all the commandments and all the scriptures. If we do not have this love for the one I am, if we do not have this love for our neighbors, then we're not in touch with the essence of what the whole Bible is attempting to convey. So to love the one is the way to find the meaning of scriptures and the meaning of life. To love your neighbor as yourself is practically the same thing. Now, some neighbors are easy to love, but others may not be. Okay. How can I love people whose behavior harms others, for example? How can I love criminals and tyrants? How can I pray for those who persecute or abuse me, or persecute or abuse those I love? How can I love my enemies? This seems extremely difficult, if not impossible. But I believe it is not really that difficult at all. The key is in praying for them, as Jesus said, pray for those who persecute you. Now, it's not necessary or even wise to pray for people to get everything they want. Right? It's not necessary or wise to pray for a tyrant to succeed or a would-be tyrant to succeed. But it's easy to pray for anyone and everyone to become more enlightened and loving. Becoming more enlightened and loving is the highest and best good for everyone. It is my prayer for myself. It is my prayer for anyone in any circumstances. The effect of becoming more enlightened is becoming more loving, and the effect of becoming more loving is becoming more enlightened. Imagine the worst person you can imagine in the history of the world. What would have happened if they had been more enlightened and more loving? would that not have resulted in less suffering and a better world? So if you observe someone engaged in what you regard as unenlightened or unloving behavior, you can pray for that person to become more enlightened and more loving. It's then up to them, of course, to receive that light and love. It's very important to remember that we do not pray that some external super person will make us or force us to be enlightened or loving. Rather, in this consciousness of truth, we affirm that divine love and wisdom are already present and at work within them. It's already there. And so when we pray this, we can easily affirm that for ourselves and for anyone. Divine love and wisdom are present and at work within me and within you. We can choose to be receptive to that truth within us. We can hold others in the consciousness that they will, at some point, open up to the divine presence and be transformed. And I regard that as a meaningful prayer because it is a prayer of love and oneness. To have consciousness of oneness is to experience love, and to have consciousness of love is to experience oneness. This is the meaning of it all. This is the meaningfulness of the universe. Consciousness of love is what makes life itself meaningful. If you look back on your life up to the present moment, you will see, I am sure, that loving and being loved is what has given meaning to your life. No accomplishment, no amount of wealth makes a person's life meaningful. Often they just want more, thinking that will bring meaning. The interconnectedness of all things signifies the meaning of the universe. It is only consciousness of oneness, consciousness of loving and being loved, that causes that feeling that we seek. Yes, my life is worthwhile. My life is meaningful. To experience the consciousness of unity and love is to experience the meaning of it all. And I believe that you already knew that. So thank you for listening. God bless.